Good evening, you're welcome back to our weekly question and answer series for anash.org. Question: I'm going to family chasanas after I daven מעריב, but my cousins are making a minyan Mנחה since they go according to Rabbeinu Tam. Can I answer Kedusha and Amen? It's interesting, I received this question a while ago and I didn't get to it, and this week for the Kinnes HaShlichem it came out a Reshimas Divrei HaRebbe, which the Rebbe went to be Manach the Baba of Rebbe Reb Shloimele. And over there, and Ois Dalet, the Rebbe says that there's a daya in the Rishonim that Nichem Avaylam is a deraisa. So if it's a mitzvah says a deraisa, then you have to make a bracha. So therefore, is a minig that you connect Nichem Avaylam together with tefillah. So to speak, the tefillah should be like a bracha. So the Baba Rebbe says for the Rebbe, correct, we are going to daven right away Mincha. Now the Rebbe had davened already Mincha, and it was already time for מעריב, according to the Lubavitcher's man. And there was a question of you should answer Kedusha or not answer Kedusha. So the Reb Shmuel of Hitten said that there was such a question once by the Alter Rebbe with Reb Leib Yitzchak of Baditchov, and he doesn't remember what the answer was, if you should answer Kedusha or not. And the Rebbe said, by mir is ausgekommen, that means I think that when Yidden daven and say Kedusha, you cannot stay on the side and not say together with them. That means you should say Kedusha. This is what the Rebbe says. So we see the Rebbe holds that even if it's מעריב or after מעריב by you, since by other people they're still davening Mincha, because they are going according to Rabbeinu Tam, and not like us, we're going according to the Go'onim. So therefore, you should answer Kedusha. Now, the same thing writes also the Bechut Shuruf, the Eishlav Ruam, in Simar Reish Lamed Bais, in Divrei Maschel Hashuz Dechike, he writes that when a person, even if he davened מעריב already, or a Kapurim is after the Shkia, he could still answer Kedusha. And he brings a raya that the poskim say that you shouldn't daven Ne'ilah late after the Shkia, because it is a problem to say Hayom Yipuna. That means we say by Ne'ilah, one of the piyutim, we say the day is about to go away. But if it's after the Shkia, it's a lie. It left already. So we see the poskim only have a problem of davening late Ne'ilah because of the piyat Hayom Yipuna, and they don't have a problem davening late because you have to say Kedusha and you can't say Kedusha when it's dark. So from this he comes to the conclusion that you could say Kedusha even when it's late and even when it's night. And this is also what the Maramshik in his Shivas or Chaim Simon Tzadik Aleph, he was also asked the same question that people are davening very late. B'maizet, if you could answer Kedusha v'Amen. And after he has a whole arichas, he comes to the conclusion that avada, it is not permitted to daven late Mincha till Tzesek Echovim. But if a minyan does daven Mincha after Tzesek Echovim, it's not a bracha levatola, and a person is permitted to answer Umain and Kedusha. So we see that the same as the Rebbe answered, that by mir like Tzichup, it comes out in according to me, that you should answer, we see the poskim before also paskins that you should answer Kedusha Baruchi. So getting back to your question, although you daven מעריב already, you could still answer Kedusha, since they are davening Mincha in their time when they are davening, it's still Ben Hashmoshos, and they could daven mincha. Question: can Shmoyne Esrei be said while sitting? Kids commuting to school in the car or bus, long distance, and need to daven. Can they daven while they are sitting? The Baal Shaivet Halevi writes that the person is traveling with a plane over the bus, and he cannot pick himself up to daven bekavona. That means if he's going to pick himself up in daven in a bus, the bus is flying around. You know, he's gonna fall. He won't have kavona. Or if a person davens in a plane and people go through the aisle, so he won't have kavana. Rather, he should sit in a seat and daven when he sits, then stand up. So to answer your question, children which are commuting a long distance and have to daven, if they can daven before going to school, or if they can daven when they come to school, for sure they should daven then and not daven in the car or in the bus. But if they can't and they have to daven while commuting, then they can daven Shmoyne Esrei while sitting, because that will give them the proper kavana to be able to daven. Question: I took out my air conditioner and installed a central air conditioning system. Can I close up the hole where the air conditioner was, or is it forbidden according to Rabbi Chosid? A very good question. We know Rabbi Chosid says that wherever you had a window or a door, you shouldn't close any openings. And it's a skona. So the question is over here, if you had an air conditioner box, which there was an air conditioner inside, and now you want to close it up because you installed the air conditioning system, can you close it up? And the answer is, my Rebbe, the Rav Osner, writes in Shaivet Halevi, Chaylig Yud, Siman Kiv Samachai as Gimel, regarding this question, an air conditioner, and he says that according to the Bachut Shuruv, the Das Kedoshim, that wherever it is not exactly like Rabbi Chosid said, you could be lenient. So Rabbi Chosid says only a window or a door. Taking out an air conditioner from an air conditioning box is not the same as a door and a window, and therefore he says you could be lenient and close it up. I think to add on to this too, that by air conditioner it's even more lenient because it was never an opening. It was always closed. There was an air conditioner inside. So basically the hole where the air conditioner of the whole wall is always closed. So therefore it's not a problem to close it up. And it's not a problem of Rabbi Chosid. Question: my granddaughter wanted a stuffed flamingo doll. Are birds not listed in Chumash dafke not kosher? The Torah mentions birds which are not kosher. And that doesn't mean that any bird which is not in the Torah it's dafke not kosher. The Mishnah Masechtas Chilun, Daf Nin Tes, says that the simonim for an animal or for a chaya, the Torah writes. You know exactly what is the simonim to identify if it's kosher or not. The same will also go to fish. The Torah gives us exact simonim how to identify a kosher fish or a non-kosher fish. When it comes to birds, the Torah does not give any simonim. But Chazal gave us simonim, which is a bird which is a predator is toma, a bird which has extra finger and it has a zefik, it is tor. Any bird which divides their fingers when you put them on a line or on a tree, it's toma. Chazal give us simona, we should identify what is a kosher bird, what is not a kosher bird. Regarding your stuffed flamingo, flamingo is for sure another non-kosher bird. It is related to the non-kosher bird which is called stork. So to answer your question, a flamingo is a non-kosher bird. So if you are makpid, like the Rebbe wants, that you shouldn't have toys and dolls which are non-kosher, a flamingo doll is a non-kosher bird. Question. The poskim have a machloikis if a person is allowed to squeeze fruit, vegetables in Yom Tov. And some poskim say that if you make a shini and it is not as fresh as if you do it in Yom Tov, you could squeeze it on Yom Tov. That means squeezing on Yom Tov is it's not permitted because it's a thing which is done. Usually squeezing fruits and vegetables are done for a couple of days. So you don't have to do it on Yom Tov. Anything which you don't have to do on Yom Tov, you can do before Yom Tov, then you cannot do it on Yom Tov. So schit is one of the things which is you do usually for a couple of days, and therefore schit is also Yom Tov. Now the Mechlokes Poskim, if you do it b'shini, not the regular way, and it's a thing which is getting better if it's freshly squeezed, if you could be lenient. So the question is, what's our meaning? And the answer is the Alter Rebbe Siman Tuf Tzadik Hai in Hilchos Yom Tov Sif Tes asers afila even through shini, and it gives a reason because schita is a thing which you do for a couple of days, and it doesn't add on or mention anything that if it's better if you squeeze it today, it should be mutter. So therefore, to answer your question, squeezing fruits and vegetables is not permitted on Yom Tov, even if you do it not with a shini, not the regular way, and even if you're going to do it today, it's going to have a better taste, you cannot do it on Yom Tov. Question, can you explain some tzedukah priorities? Relatives versus local versus distance. What is the categories, if you could explain? So in Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch says in Sinman Reishni in Alav Yeredeya, Hilchos Tzedukah, that a person should prefer to give tzedukah for a relative before he gives for poor people which are not his relative. And even if the people who are not your relative have less money than your relative, that means your relative is also a poor person, but he has a little bit more than the other one. For instance, he has food, but he doesn't have clothing, and the other oni, which is not your relative, needs even food. You should give and prefer to give for your relative before the other oni. And even if the other poor person is a Talmid Chacham, a Korov comes before a Talmid Chacham. So in Shulchan Aruch, it gives you the priorities. The first and the most important is the closest irrelative Gilfa. What is the priorities? Is the first, number one, is your father and your mother. If they are poor, the first thing you should give for them. Number two is your children. Your son, your daughter, they are adults. And Stachemad adds on that also your granddaughters, your grandchildren are also in the same category as your children, which are the adult children. Third priority is your grandfather, grandmother. And they are only after your adult children. Fourth is your brother, which is a brother from one father. and the same will also go a sister from from the same father. Fifth is a brother or sister from the same mother, not from the same father. And in Shivas Givas Pinchas says that your sister from the same mother comes before your nephews from the children of your brother from your same father. Although a brother from the same father comes before your brother and sister from the same mother, but their children are not before your sibling from your mother. And the sixth is all other relatives, which include also your ex. Your ex is bechlal, your grusha is bechlal, your relative. And all these come before other aniyim. So to make it short, your father, your parents come before your children come before your siblings, your brother, your siblings from your father comes before your siblings from your mother, and then comes the rest of your cousins. The rest of the cousins, if they are the same relative, then a Talmid Chacham comes before, then a non-Talmid Chacham. Cousins, relatives, which are relatives through your wife, are also considered your relatives, and they come before other aniyim. That's priorities in people whom to give. Then there's priorities on tzedakah which you should give. Which the first tzedakah is pidyon shvuim. To take out people from jail, take out people from enemies. The number two is giving money. Children should be able to learn Torah, and in the same category is giving for poor people which are sick and they can't take care of themselves. And the same category goes also afterwards, poor people which are hungry and don't have what to dress. These are all in the second category after Pidyon Shvuim. Third category is giving for to marry off children of a poor person, and that comes before giving for a poor person itself. Marrying up comes before giving for a poor person. By some poskim, the Shach says only if the poor person's daughter is also a Yisoima, then it comes before other tzedukahs. But if she has parents, then she doesn't come before giving food for other aniyim. Fourth is giving for a basic knesses. Now, giving a basic knesses means in a town where there isn't any shul. If you have a shul there and you want to open up a shul, it doesn't go into these priorities because you have a shul. If you open a new community and there isn't a shul, then Bong Basic Knesses is the fourth priority. Some poskim say that they come even before giving for poor people. And Moshe Feinstein, Nigris Moshe, Yeredai Chalig Baisim Kiftes Vov says, building a mikveh comes before Talmud Torah, but that's only if it's in a place which there's a chashash. If you won't have a mikveh, people will come and being over an Isser Chorus. If it's a community which, if you don't build a mikveh, people will travel to a mikveh, then it doesn't come before Talmud Torah. But if it's a place, but if you don't have it, you're gonna have a mikveh, people will not go to the mikveh. This comes for a Talmud Torah. But let me just make it clear. Whenever we say that we just said two priorities in family and priorities in kind of tzedakah. When we say priorities in family, that's only for a person, a private person. A private person, when he wants to give tzedakah, he has the priorities of family, his father, his parents, his children, his siblings, his grandfather. But when it comes to a community tzedukah fund, there's no priorities between parents, children. Even if the Gabbat tzedukah's parents are poor, he has no right to give for them more than for someone else. Because all this inyonam, which we just said, you should give for your relative before other poor person, that's for a private person. He has the schus and has the mitzvah, to give first for his relatives, then for other people. But not a tzedukah organization. But when it comes to the priorities which you mentioned, for a cheder, for a shul, all these things, it is only, these priorities are only for a tzedukah organization and not for a private person. A private person could give for whatever he wants to give because he has a toivus hanua that he could give for whatever person, for whatever organization he wants to give. So the first priorities, which is relatives, that goes priorities for a private person. The second priority is for what kind of tzedukahs to give. That's dafke for a tzedukah organization, which they have to give priority for a pidyon shvuim before a cheder, before a Talmud Torah, and before other things. But a private person is not bound by all these priorities, and he could give for wherever he wants to give. Question. I want to build my sukkah, and right next to me my neighbor has a tree which the branches are coming into my property, and it covers my property that I cannot build a sukkah. Am I allowed to cut off the branches which come into my property? And the answer is yes. Wherever it's mazik you could cut off. You cannot cut off the whole tree which is in his property, but wherever branches comes into your property, you could cut off, because it is mazik you. And the halacha is when a person has a tree in his property and it goes into his friend's property and it's mazik him, he has the right, the Torah gave him the right for the person which gets nizik to cut up as much that he needs to have to take away the hazaikas. But he cannot force the person which owns the tree to cut it off. You have to take a company and cut it off and pay the expenses. But you're allowed to cut it off. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again next week. And send in your questions to inbox@anash.org. Good night and have a wonderful week.